All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to start the regular June 13th regular Board of Finance meeting. Could you please rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. There's no public, like always. I appreciate that. To take the time to come in. Oh, we have somebody here?
Marty's coming.
Oh, great. How are you, Marty? Thanks for joining us. We'll be right with you, okay? All right, so no public input. Any correspondence?
No.
All right, so we have minutes from May 9th. It was a regular meeting. I would accept the motion. Make a motion that we accept the minutes. Second. Any other comments about the minutes? Mary's doing a great job on the minutes. I appreciate all the work you do on it.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Record show. Unanimous. Again, this is from Paul, I believe, transfer. Brad, do you want to just speak of this? This is bad debt or taxes, uncollected taxes?
Yeah, so I think it's 15 years. After 15 years, the uncollected taxes get transferred to suspense. No, maybe after 15 years, it's written off. It can be written off. After a couple of years, she transfers them to suspense. And I think that just allows her then to use the collection agencies to go after it. And obviously, taxes associated with like a house don't ever get written off because we do tax sales. So usually the list is mostly motor vehicles. And some personal property of closed business or whatnot.
Right.
Right.
So this 89,000 is 1 year's worth of taxes that weren't paid that are ready to be written off to be able to go to collection.
Yeah, it's not written off. It's
Just-
if we move it to suspense,
That there-
and then moves it to like a collection phase, I believe. Yeah, I don't remember the last time she brought it in front of us because it could be 2 years. You know, they don't necessarily do it all the time.
But this is only 1 year's.
It could be multiple years.
five.
It's
Yeah.
whenever she does it, she can add them up for a couple of years. It could be 5 or 6.
Interesting to know though.
She
Yeah.
usually, in the past, we used to get a list of the properties.
Yeah.
So maybe if Mary is so kind, she can ask Paula, or I'll ask
No, we
Paula. Oh, you have the list? Oh,
I
it's
sent
not
it
in
to
the,
everybody.
oh,
On it?
You sent it an email?
I sent it in the email to everybody.
oh, okay.
I
Then you
didn't
do
think I
have it.
needed- Do you want it?
Yes, we're busted.
Oh, I didn't.
Well, I'll check it. You have it. Well, Mary, look at Mary has it.
I'm sorry.
Save in paper.
Same paper.
And when you say we're putting it into suspense,
It's not even real.
it's,
It just,
they're not putting it into a situation where they're suspending registration or it's just.
no, it's the suspense of.
So
Just to get clarification.
it's a tax collector term suspense.
Okay.
I'm saying pretty much that they mark it as uncollectible by their means, and I'm pretty sure that means they send it off to collections. Like it's,
I know you do suspend.
I'll give a hand.
We're not spending any of it.
It's all like it looks like it's mostly the 2019 bills, but 2019 grand list year. Which is always different, because I think we're in the 22 grand list year for the 24 budget. So it's 3 years old.
You want a hard copy of that?
No, we'll pass it down.
Yeah, I just want to
Everybody
pick up.
can see the different information on it, so. So we need a motion to approve this, obviously.
Yes.
All right, so, does everybody understand what we're doing? And I would accept a motion to approve this for 89,000.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any other discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. Let the record show you now. It's great. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
All right, so discussion, if you remember, we held this off from last month about our tax stabilization fund. Marty and Brad have talked about this a couple times. So Marty, if you want to unmute yourself. How are you, sir? So again, Marty, I know you're listening, but we didn't know how we could use this. And Brad and I had a conversation today. Maybe you could just put your 2 cents in and how would we fund this? And then what we can do with it after it's funded?
Well, the problem that I think happened with me was I was under the impression that what was being asked of was not just what it was designed for, but what else it could be used for. And my point was that the charters, if you're going to go ahead and you're going to spend some money on a brand new vehicle that was never approved under the budget or anything like that, and it's over the amounts based on the charter, you can't do it. Right? But if this is just going to be used, the tax stabilization fund is going to be used from basically what it says. The purpose is basically to keep the tax rate down. All right. I don't think it's a problem at all. What would happen is at the end of the year, when you have your fund balance, you could transfer over up to $500,000. And then the following year during the budget session, you can decide to use that to keep the budget, basically the taxes down. I mean, I know it talks about other matters other than taxes, but I think the point was that if it gets to be a problem for the taxpayers, you can take the money and use it to keep the mill rate down. It's the same thing as possibly, I don't know, coming up with having to pay for something that you really don't want to pay for, but it's part of the budget anyway. And I don't know if that helps you. And I talked to Brad about it today, and I think he's in agreement too. This isn't a situation where, you know, like if, let's say the end of the year comes and you've got this $500,000 and some emergency thing comes up, that's not what it's for. It's for the taxes itself. And you'll see it's very clear that it has to be used during the budget session. To me, that would mean up until the date that you actually set the mill rate. It's still in the budget session, so to speak.
Great. Excellent.
And
Brad, if you can just make like an example, you know what I mean?
yeah, so, like when we closed out fiscal year 22, we had excess revenue, right? And we talked a little bit at one of our meetings about not doing anything with it because we know we approved the police station range, which hasn't been paid for yet out of 22, stuff out of fund balance. The
HVAC.
The HVAC is an unknown until we find out from the state whether we're going to get approved. So right now, we're kind of holding all that money in the fund balance instead of trying to move any of it. If the HVAC, we don't get that grant, and then suddenly that $2 million is sitting there, maybe we do look to move it somewhere else as part of our fund balance policy. And the fund balance policy can fund the TSF. The way we set up the TSF made a lot of sense that it's during the budget season because it comes in as a revenue line. So I was speaking to the first selectman today about it after I talked to Marty. And I think what we'll do in the budget handouts, even though the town doesn't vote on the revenue, I'm going to make one of the lines on the handout that says transfer in from TSF or tax, whatever, and just put it on there. And probably most years it's going to be zero. But then when we're doing the budget handouts, the people can see that the plan is to use it. And look, if something happened between the town voting on the budget and us setting the mill rate and the Board of Finance decides to use some of that money, you can. But this really clarifies for us, as long as you stick to within the fund balance policy and the TSF, then you don't need to go to a town meeting to fund the tax stabilization fund or to use it. As long, obviously sticking to it means during the budget process, you put it as a revenue line.
So what I'm hearing is we can take out of the, if there's money in the fund balance, we can take 500 and move it into the tax stabilization fund. It's in there, okay? So it's here, okay? So now, if we're going into our budget season and say, oh man, we can't charge this much taxes, then we could say, hey, Brad, use this as part of the revenue, okay? And then that will lower the taxes, and that's exactly what this thing is used for. We can't go buy a dump truck with it in the middle of the year. That's what the CNR account is.
And where does the 500 come from? Where does that number come from?
So it's
Wherever
It's in
we,
the ordinance.
Oh, you know, max out 500.
Hold on.
the max.
I'm sorry, what,
the-
Marty?
Marty
You
was
said it's in the ordinance. Maximum that you can transfer is $500,000.
in that policy, it's made up, it's,
Right.
it caps it at 500,000.
Yeah, it says the maximum annual transfer shall be $500,000 in any one fiscal year.
Okay, so the reason I asked the question, so 500,000 out of a $90 million budget what, does that move the mill rate or the percentage of an increase?
So
Maybe not on its own.
pre-reval, the cost of a mill is like $2.1, $2.2 million. So 500,000 then is like 0.22 mils. Post reval, the cost of a mill is like 2.7 million. So now you're down to like 0.2 mils. It may not make a huge difference, but you know, to somebody that has a $400,000 house, 0.2 mils, it's something.
I guess where my question, so we created this policy, Nick, and we obviously, by orchestrating the policy, we picked a number, 500,000.
No, the selectmen started to make
Oh,
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was that.
This was done by ordinance. And the select, are the ones that have the authority. I know it was discussed with the Board of Finance as well. But this is the Board of Selectmen. And
Put a number, right?
if I can just say one more thing,
Yes, Martin.
I don't think there's any reason why you can't carry it over more than 1 year.
Right.
Correct.
So, you know, if you, right, if you get a couple of good years and you've got $1 million in there, you know, you can do that if you don't use it every year. I mean, that's up to your board.
One of the early drafts of it talked about not taking more than a third of it in a year. And then the discussion was, why would we limit ourselves to it? But in general term, like unless it's truly a one-off, if there is $1 million in it, you probably don't want to take the million all in 1 year because now you're just pushing off.
You're killing
creating
yourself for
the
next year.
cliffs.
Yeah.
Ideally, this is just to help some of the smoothing of it.
The only point I want to make is that it's a great idea if it's used specifically and only for that reason.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think our hands are tied that it is for this reason. Is that correct, Marty?
That's
Right.
correct.
That's, you know.
You know,
the only
not to
way it'll
use,
work.
not to use New Fairfield as a problem, but they have a big problem this year. And maybe 200,000 or 300,000 would have helped them. And it's okay, listen, you know, if we have a problem, we can't raise our taxes more than 6%. Here, let's put 300 into, you know, into the revenue side, and then that just helps the new spending. And that's kind of what the policy just
And-
for.
some of the cap, when Matt was here, he looked at a bunch of other towns and him and I looked at a bunch of other towns. Some of the reason you put the cap in, by creating this, what you're trying to do is tell the rating agencies, we're not looking to do big swings. So we're gonna put a chunk of money in, we could use some of it, but you don't really want to dump 2 million in it, then the next year buy down your mill rate and you know, they want stable. You know, that's why it's called tax stabilization, even like, you
Just
know,
take a nice little hump out of it,
Yeah.
because again, if you do 1 million or 2 million, now next year you've got this big hole you gotta climb back out of, you know what I mean?
like in the budget, the state budget that was just signed. ECS, the equal cost sharing, that the town gets as revenue is supposed to go up like $600,000. That's great. Until the following year, what if they cut it to 600,000? And then suddenly we have a $600,000 hole. You have a $600,000 hole in your revenue and you have $1 million over here. Maybe you make it a $200,000 hole that first year, you know, and
Easily
just 500 the next, so you can kind of glide in on your landing instead of these hard swings. And that's happened 1 year, the state, after we set a budget, cut $800,000 from
That was
ECS.
COVID. I remember exactly when it was. And
I think it was pre-COVID.
it was pre-COVID pending. I mean,
Yeah.
COVID had just started and it was but
Yeah.
they've been fighting this forever.
Yeah.
And even back when I was on the board of that, it was like 75%, that's all we get. But I know that superintendent and there's been a lot of people pushing
lot of
back.
talk.
I don't think they're gonna cut it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Are you talking about the,
Cost sharing,
but are you talking about the special ed cost
Special
sharing?
ed you're talking about.
maybe I
The
am.
money from
And
the,
yeah,
from the
because the
state.
COVID, not the ECS, the big cut was like
Right.
5 or 6 years ago.
Okay,
And the Board of Ed were good players with us, even though it was town revenue and they
Right.
could have still spent their budget. They returned like 700 of the 800,000.
yes, I
you know,
remember that too.
so- But they could have turned around and said, no,
Yeah, because they have a number approved.
yeah, so. But again, it's try to take some of those peaks out both ways.
Right.
So,
Okay,
All right, Marty, we do appreciate you coming and explaining it. I think it washed out pretty well, and if Marriott's notes can just represent that plus the video.
Yeah.
Just to make sure there's no problems on the road, so.
we have one more thing related on this topic.
Sure.
When we updated the fund balance policy last year, I believe it was the Board of Selectmen that made the motion that they wanted me to review it with the Board of Finance every year. So we said it last year at 18%. I don't think we're looking to do anything, but this is formally me reviewing the fund balance policy with the Board of Finance, because we're gonna do it yearly, and this is our yearly review. Obviously, if you have any questions about the fund balance piece of it, let's,
You want that in a motion, but everybody knows we're gonna keep 18% in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you currently think 18 is a sweet spot that.
yeah,
the
I wouldn't
town
really
council
wanna
would
go-
look
Yeah, everybody.
given everything going on, I think 18 is a good number. We all know right now we're way above it. But that's
But there's
until the
things still-
HVAC and the, you know,
Right, we don't know.
we
real
have
number.
projects that just haven't
Yeah.
timed out yet. So ideally, if we were up to date on all of our capital stuff,
Then we know.
we would be looking to bring us down closer to that 18.
Right.
But
So I do have one, before Marty disappears, so, but we're all in agreement on the fund balance, it requires a public hearing to be able to transfer money from the fund balance to the CNR account.
Oh,
yes,
yes.
Yeah.
and not a public
Yeah.
hearing, a town meeting.
Town meeting.
Town meeting.
Town, yes.
It's simple.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is only if you're gonna fund the tax stabilization.
No, I know, right,
Yeah.
but the other way to get money
We
from the.
need to do
fund
that
balance.
with a town.
Yeah.
Great.
Correct.
Again, Marty, thank you very much.
Okay,
Good night, sir.
Okay, next thing on the agenda, so there's no action on that, and we just wanted to, everybody to understand what we're doing there. So again, consideration for transferring the salt and sand savings for 100,000 into the road account. Does someone want to just make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
And do we have a second on that for discussion?
Second your motion.
We talked about this early on, from the mile and winter, we thought we are gonna have some savings, and why not take it, you know, it was spent money, basically. So
It's a no-brainer for me.
it's a no-brainer, exactly.
So right now it's at $113,000 is left. 113,000. There's still gonna be some small bills that come in on it. So not only is 100 a nice round number, but it's a comfortable number. So that Dibble can get some more
Leave a
road
little
done
bit in there.
in, because they're paving the next couple weeks, I think.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right, do we know what we're getting out of 100,000? Is there a couple miles capped?
it all depends on if they're doing a full depth or I don't know which roads
Yeah.
he's doing.
Bobby does a good job with it. so
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, so. And I believe they scheduled the roads, that's kind of why we talked about it on the phone last month. I think we missed a meeting, is that what we did? Well, we had to get a consensus,
Yeah,
consensus.
I just wanted to get them scheduled. Obviously, he
Right.
canceled stuff, but I know like you and I, Nick, talked about it and I'm sure you reached out to him.
Oh, no, we reached out, definitely.
Yeah.
All in favor of transferring that 100,000 into the road account?
Aye.
All right, let the record show unanimous. Brad, it's your baby here, come on.
All right. Revenue is looking good. It has been looking good. We talked a lot about the state revenue. We budgeted 282, it's at 751. Obviously, that makes us happy. And a lot of that is the car fund. We are scheduled, I sent out an email the other day. The state budget calls for the town of Bethel getting $500,000 in motor vehicle taxes. We know our motor vehicle mill rate has been 32 for a while, so I'm capping it at 32.46 didn't really affect us. We didn't budget for that 500,000. I know that's a 2024 issue, but we did get the money in 23. That's why I'm bringing it up. I anticipate we'll probably get it in 24. I don't think we'd get it after that because now our mill rate is for everything is below the 32.46 that the state set motor vehicles at. So revenue looks good. Expenses, some of the things are over because we haven't done. Every year, we charge to the water and sewer departments, a portion of IT, town insurance, auditing from the finance department. Probate court gets charged out to the other 3 towns. They're gonna start bugging me in a couple weeks for their number. The big one is park and rec is over. A lot of that is salaries. And a lot of it has to do with. I think they ran the after school. We talked about it during the budget. They had a lot more need for the after school project, the before and after school.
Yeah.
After COVID. And their revenues are already up $136,000, which isn't the full 228. But they're still collecting all the the camp money. So it looks bad on the expense side, but the revenue side is gonna look good at that.
I'm not afraid of
And I think we need to. Now we have a new park and rec director. I think when we go into the next budget. I want to really look at our revenue numbers and expenditure numbers. And I don't really want to be, oh, we're over in expenses, but we're over in revenue. Maybe we bump them both up to where we really think we're gonna be. Which wouldn't, if we bump them up equally, it wouldn't affect the mill rate. But at least now we're not looking like we don't know what we're doing. Because this feels like we're looking like we don't know what we're doing. And some of it was, they had demand, they filled it, and they got paid for it. The utilities is over, but we will charge a good portion of that out to water and sewer. We're still waiting more bills from that. Obviously, we have a month to go. Fleet maintenance is one that I think we talked about at a previous meeting, is over by a lot. Because we've been waiting 2 years for trucks, 2.5 years, I think, for one truck. So they're having it, most of it's all on the highway department line. It's trying to keep our old plow trucks running. And I guess you talked about the $100,000 for the roads. One of the other benefits of a mild winter, those trucks weren't ridden as hard because I know they're doing everything they can to keep them going. I'm just pulling up that line exactly.
So when a private company does work on the trucks, it comes out of fleet maintenance. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
yeah.
And I think he's having a lot of stuff down also bigger
Yeah.
jobs.
So the highway maintenance line was budgeted for 109. The actual spend is 182. And they're not doing anything that they don't absolutely need to. But they need to keep the trucks on the road because they can't get them replaced.
So are we waiting for 3 trucks or 2 big trucks?
So there's one that I think was ordered in full. That one's the one that's like 2 years old
That's with the body and everything.
with the body and everything. We have 2 approved chassis without the bodies yet.
Big chassis.
Big chassis. And I think we're waiting on a low boy.
I think we're waiting on one more low white.
I'll tell you one.
So Nick, does that mean we still need to find $100,000 to put a body on
Yeah.
one of these cabin
Right,
chassis?
2 of them.
2 of them. Let's see.
And I don't know what about the low boy. You still gotta fit that up too.
Oh, so in March 9th of 2021, the Board of Finance approved $103,000 for a Class 8 truck. 103 is just the chassis.
Just a chassis, yeah.
So there's 3 more bodies that we have to buy.
Oh, I'm sorry. But that one's not fit up yet? Oh, I'm sorry, we have,
100,000.
so there's 3 big trucks we're waiting for.
I believe so. That's the one that was from 2021. And did
Oh, so we did one in 22. We didn't do one yet this year.
ARPA,
Or this, oh, yeah.
when the loader was bought,
Yeah.
I'm pulling that up now. I think the Board of Selectmen,
There's 3 trucks. Cabs waiting. Because we had to jump on because of getting in a list. It wasn't gonna come in over a year.
yeah, so the Board of Selectmen from the ARPA funds approved 1 chassis for 129. So there's 2 chassis on order. One from 2021 and one from February of 23.
So there's just 2 then,
Yes,
just 2 big ones. Okay.
yeah.
And it was just chassis only.
Yes, because they don't really know
Yeah, no, I don't.
when you're waiting that long, how long.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's what's killing the fleet account.
$90,000 to keep them on the road.
And in capital non-recurring. The Board of Finance approved in September of 22, roughly $165,000 for 2 F-55 truck build outs. So those are the low boys. And the low boys were bought in, the chassis were ordered in October of 21.
But paid for now?
So
We paid for
the
that.
chassis were 37.5 in 2021. The build outs
Was
for the 2 of them were $80,000 each.
And we already approved that motion.
Yeah,
Now,
that's been approved.
That's been paid.
We haven't paid it. We haven't paid the bill, but
But
it's,
it's
yeah,
allocated.
yeah, allocated,
Out of the CNR
yes. So at some point, when those chassis come in,
for the big truck,
for the big trucks,
150 grand. round number.
And I hope we approve that. We had nice new trucks in.
so,
Parade truck.
so yeah, that's pretty much my comptroller report.
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Any other questions for Brad? Hearing that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Second the motion.
Any other discussion? Good, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you.
We should make these meetings early, but maybe we'll talk about that this